Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Mark Silvestri Day, so yet again we're looking at the latest issue in his Wolverine run from the early 1990s. This is issue 41, cover dated early July. We have Cable appearing in this issue. He's a pretty hot character in and around this time, pretty new, created by Rob Liefeld. We've been covering him in New Mutants, and pretty soon we'll be covering him in X-Force. And we also have Sabretooth, who obviously is Wolverine's main nemesis, appearing in this issue. Looking at the cover, really dynamic and eye-catching. I remember it caught my eye back in the day. I remember it well from seeing it on the newsstand. I didn't quite pull the trigger on the series at that moment. I was kind of a casual collector, but slowly but surely I was collecting the X-Men, X-Force, and eventually I started collecting Wolverine as well. Really like the artwork. Again, why are we covering Wolverine in this period? Because of the Mark Silvestri artwork. So great cover. Let's move on, have a look inside. Really just cool, well-designed, simple, and effective splash page here. Clearly, you know, it'd be hard to tell if you were underwater, if not for the fish. I guess that gives it away. And the bubbles here and there. So just enough clues to clue us in as to where the story is taking place. Again, Wolverine is being printed now on the slightly higher quality newsprint paper. I've talked about this before. I think the colors sit really well on it. Still dull the black a little bit, but not as much as, you know, the really cheap newsprint. Just enough where I think it looks good and it's, you know, soft on the eye rather than when it's printed on glossy paper and the black is super black. This is, when it comes to production values, is kind of the high point for me throughout comics history. I think this level of color and paper quality is probably the best, at least for, you know, monthly floppy comics. So we've got Larry Hama on script, Mark Silvestri pencils, Dan Green inks, Pat Brosseau letters, and Glynis Oliver on colors. So basically our pretty much our regular team on this book. So once again, you'll notice lots of good storytelling going on. We're still not in the world of Image, so we've got, you know, a good decent amount of panels on each page. Storytelling flow is easy to follow. Lots of silhouettes, lots of use of big black spaces. Mark Silvestri is pretty good at that, but, you know, everything is clear. The way he draws tech in the background and stuff is pretty cool as well. You know, there's in some aspects an old school kind of feel to some of Mark Silvestri's compositions and you know, illustration work that kind of gets lost later on when he kind of integrates the Image style and the Jim Lee kind of style. But right now we're pretty much hitting peak Silvestri, I think, for the art, at least for my tastes. So the Wolverine kind of symbiote clone, not symbiote, but facsimile robot guy, synthetic person, kind of like in Aliens, is stuck down with the stealth bomber that's crashed into the Hudson River last issue. So they just kind of leave him there. They figure he's dead. Obviously in comics, when you figure someone's dead, probably not, but, you know, that's how it goes. I like the representation of the Twin Towers here with the clouds. The way that's done looks really good. We don't obviously see them today in comics, but back then, you know, when you drew New York, those were kind of landmarks that you would include there to indicate that the story is taking place in New York. And again, Mark Silvestri, great illustrator, great silhouettes and shadows here, and great faces all around. I think Forge's face specifically here is very cool. Just a funny kind of aside when it comes to coloring. So Forge is supposed to be a Native American character. So even in the early 90s, we were still kind of using this kind of red, pink kind of hue for Aboriginal characters, which I've never quite understood. I've never really seen, you know, Aboriginal people as having red skin, but more maybe just brownish skin. It's an odd thing from the past. I'm not quite sure where that comes from. One thing I want to state throughout this issue is how great the backgrounds are. They go into the sewers, right? And all of a sudden the book kind of takes on a horror kind of aspect, which I think is good. Let's not forget this is a bi-weekly schedule. So he's doing 2 issues of Wolverine a month. So he's got to be pretty economical. And I think these kind of backgrounds lend themselves to being able to do that, right? You don't have to use too much actual perspective and stuff. You can kind of guess at the backgrounds rather than be super precise, and they all still work because it's just all a bunch of crooked bricks and archways and things. So I think a lot of the economy of line and stuff is found in the background here when you look, and probably how quickly he was able to draw most of this stuff. So in this issue, Wolverine's having some sort of hallucination flashback sequence where he's, going back to bad parts of his history. This specifically here is a reference, and we'll see later, to an old issue of Wolverine where Sabretooth shows up on his birthday. It's established that he does that every year and kind of messes with him and fucks with him in one way or another. And this particular callback is to, I believe, I could be wrong, but Sabretooth killing his lover at the time, who was Silver Fox. So LCD, the little robot girl, she's still around in the story. So she's going to find Logan, steps over Sabretooth's body to do that. And of course, Sabretooth, as well as Albert, as we'll see later, is not done for, and will still be thorns in Wolverine's side throughout the next few issues. So we're seeing what Wolverine's seeing here, which is the flashback to Silver Fox being dead, the cabin, that classic issue. I'm not quite sure which one it is. Is it Wolverine number 10 or something like that? If you have the answer, guys, leave it in the comments and let me know if that's right. I love this shot here with all the water pouring down, and again, those great sewer archways that Silvestri is doing. Kind of reminiscent of older, maybe horror movies, like reminds me of the Phantom of the Opera, kind of that kind of stuff. Love here too with the Morlocks and Mask. Looks really good. These creatures. There's a somewhat of a Bernie Wrightson vibe, I think, with some of these more horror kind of characters and some of the rendering and the feathering he's doing here. But always very, very clear, easy to read. Sabretooth looks good pretty much throughout the issue. I feel like, once again, this is a flashback to that issue I was telling you about, and I think Bill Sienkiewicz or Sienkiewicz, I'm never quite sure how to pronounce that, drew that issue, or at least the cover. But I remember the artwork being pretty gritty, so I feel like there's a bit of a callback here in the Silvestri art where he's just doing a bit of grittiness here as a callback to that. Always thought this here was a cool, great shot of Wolverine and Sabretooth kind of going at it. Or at least in this case, Sabretooth going at Wolverine. Now, let's take a little pause and look at this, what I think is an amazing illustration by Mike Mignola. So in and around this period, I found out in later years that he was actually supposed to do some sort of Fantastic Four X-Men crossover miniseries. There's an image out there floating. You can find it if you write Mike Mignola X-Men Fantastic Four on Google Image. And it's kind of an illustration he had done of the characters all kind of together. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure Wolverine's got a cigar, and the Thing does as well, which I really appreciate, because as I've mentioned probably a bunch of times, I still think it's pretty stupid that Marvel has this, and Disney, I guess now, has this no smoking rule in the Marvel universe, when in fact, if there was any character where it would make sense, it's probably Wolverine. He's got the healing factor. It's not going to hurt him, really. And again, this is all make-believe, so I don't see what the problem is there. In real life, I mean, people have stopped, maybe not, smoking is maybe not as common as it used to be as far as cigarettes, but you got people vaping and doing that kind of stuff. So, if you're trying to represent some aspects of the real world, it stands to reason that there would be at least some people smoking in that world, right? But I digress. Let's talk about this again. And that X-Men Fantastic Four miniseries never came to be because I've heard through interviews with Mike Mignola, some editor didn't like him or was messing with him or something, and he eventually was fed up with all that and decided to move over to Dark Horse, which, good on him. That's where he created or brought his creation Hellboy, and to much success in the comics and in movies as well. So he's done pretty well for himself there with that character and his artwork there. But I find this illustration here is a perfect example of that Mike Mignola sweet spot where, he was still being very illustrative, as well as using those harsh kind of shadows and angular lines that he's known for. But he's still kind of maybe a little bit more academic, not quite as simplified and cartoony as he becomes on Hellboy. Not that that's bad, but there's just something so evocative, I think, about this illustration specifically, with the level of detail. And it's almost like when you look at Cable, even though there's shadows and stuff, there's almost like a hint of, I would say, Geoff Darrow with all the intricate kind of little details and the guns and stuff. It's hard to beat Rob Liefeld drawing Cable. Obviously, he originated the character, and definitely, other people have tried drawing them, it doesn't really come out well. Here and there, you'll get some examples where it works, I think. But definitely, I think Mike Mignola is maybe the second best Cable artist. I think the way he's interpreted Cable here with the shadows, but also the bionics and the cybernetics and the pouches and guns and stuff is just super cool. Really like it. You know, it extrapolates from the Liefeld design, changes certain things, but doesn't veer too far. And I just, again, with Wolverine there in the foreground, the intricate kind of, you know, Mignola-esque old broken statue kind of backgrounds with some, you know, steampunk pipes thrown in for good measure, and the skulls and all the kind of Mignola tropes, right? Some old tombstones or bas-relief, I guess, from like, you know, you can imagine from some cathedral or something. All of this image here is just awesome to me, and I wish we had gotten more of this phase of Mike Mignola's art. I think we get a bit of it in the first few maybe issues of Hellboy, in the first few miniseries. So, of course, the battle between Sabretooth and Wolverine rages on. You got some cool faraway shot, close-ups. Love the Sabretooth shot here. Looks really cool. I think Marc Silvestri does a pretty solid Sabretooth, in canon mostly. And here all of a sudden is where we're introduced to Cable in this issue. I think Silvestri does a really good Cable overall. Maybe a little more down-to-earth militaristic, even though he's got the bionic arm and the eye and all that stuff. But looks pretty cool. I mean, almost straight out of Commando or something. And almost kind of, even with this shot here, these two shots, kind of reminds me a little bit of Josh Brolin from the Deadpool movie. Kind of looks like him a little bit. The hairline could be receding a bit more with my, you know, Cable canon. More Sabretooth Wolverine action. Love this shot here. Like just the animalistic kind of posturing of Sabretooth and Wolverine, of course. You know, they both obviously are represented, or kind of totems of animals, I guess you could describe them. Kind of a funny shot here. This almost looks like to me like Greg Capullo. I like this quick kind of sketchy shot of Sabretooth here. I think it's really good. So we've got all the animals stampeding towards the two guys, the two antagonists, Wolverine and Sabretooth, not necessarily attacking them, but plowing through them and past them, right? As if they're running from something, as Wolverine says. And of course, well, here comes, you know, a fuck ton of water, basically, set off by some of the Morlocks here, led by Mask. I think it's the Morlocks, pretty sure. You know, trying to flush the two out of the sewers there. Possibly kill them. Pretty solid storytelling overall, right? Nice and clear. Talking about that bi-weekly schedule again. You can tell this was drawn quickly, but there's something to that sometimes when you have an artist who's skilled enough that it really works, and it really seems to give off kind of the energy of the rate at which the artist is working, right? And, you know, thankfully the story takes place in the sewers, so there's a lot of chance of using silhouette, you know, getting through these panels and these pages quickly. I love, you know, the quick swishy designs in the water here. Very cool. Not much perspective needing to be used because obviously there's old sewers, right? So you can kind of twist and bend them, and it's, you know, you're not spending so much time on the backgrounds, right? So you can plow through these pages pretty quickly, but overall they still look amazing, I have to say. Obviously because we've got, you know, a very talented artist working on it. And so, you know, callback, I guess, Forge, Jubilee, no longer in the water, you know, trying to get them out of the stealth bomber. Albert, who obviously we thought was dead, somehow gets zapped here by a fish. Is that what happens? You were down there with me. The only body in the bomber was that Wolverine android. No, I'm sorry. When he kind of comes back to life, sparks back to life, I guess it zaps this fish. That makes a bit more sense, right? And that's just a pretty darn cool Silvestri drawing here. And like I said, you know, with Albert, he's leaning more into the horror aspect of comic books and comic book illustration, and you know, adding those textures and stuff. I think he's really good at that as well. Even this whole environment of the sewer in this issue and next issue is very horror oriented, I guess. We got a pin up here by Art Tibert or Tibert. You know, this is a little bit before maybe he was fully trying to kind of ape Jim Lee. Maybe in the actual aesthetic and look of his inking, it's pretty close because he has inked Jim Lee. He's kind of, you know, the closest to Scott Williams, you know, who's inked Jim Lee and made it look kind of similar or the same. So I think his Wolverine's really good here. Pre-Lee, if I can say that and call it that. His Sabretooth is a bit odd though. I think just as an artist, right, the odd choice to throw the shadow here on the mane just confuses us, and we think it's another character with some sort of blonde cape. Like almost, you know, I could almost think, I thought this was like Creeper, and he's a DC character, right? So I could think it's Creeper, but it's actually Sabretooth. So if you take that out and we understand that that whole mane around his head is blonde as well, I think that solves the problem there. You can even leave the shadow on the face. But yeah, this kind of doesn't work for me, but I think the Wolverine up here is very cool. This again, right? This is a quick little advert for, and below just a peek at the upcoming Wolverine special, Reign of Terra, by Peter David and Andy Kubert, on sale this fall. Watch for it. Reign of Terra. It's almost like Australian. I don't know what's going on with that book. I've never seen it. I've never seen it, you know, in comic book shops, out there looking through bins. So if anyone can elucidate and inform me on where I could, you know, maybe find a copy, because I'd certainly be interested in checking it out and possibly reviewing it. It's kind of one of those mystery obscure comics from when I was a kid that I've just never seen that book at all. Not physically anyways, only in ads. So there you have it. That was my review of Wolverine issue 41 by Marc Silvestri. Really cool issue. Remember this cover being striking, and it led to me eventually starting to collect Wolverine officially with the next issue 42, which I do have an old review of. You can check out if you want to. If you're not subscribed but you're viewing the channel and you enjoy the content that I put out, please subscribe. It helps us out, helps give us more visibility and put us out there to other people who might be interested in the kind of reviews that I'm doing here. So everyone out there who's watching, thank you so much, and I hope everyone out there has a great day.
Like, subscribe. Like, subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.